This is the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. My name is Andre. I'm with USAEBN, and we are pleased to be joined by Nancy Leader from ZetaTalk.com. Nancy, how are you?
Oh, I'm here. I'm so excited to give you this hour because I got excited when I started laying out the evidence. You know how we talk about the end times and the end time prophecies, and are we in the end times? Mm-hmm. Well, I gathered together a lot of these old prophecies and took a look at the evidence we are already seeing. And guess what? The end times it's happening now. It's going to build up to big crescendo, of course, but I have the evidence. Stick with me, and I'll talk to you about it. Before we move on, I want to have our standard disclaimer. In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. For the record, whenever Nibiru is mentioned during today's show, it is understood to be in the opinion of the Zetas, not yet admitted by the establishment. We are presenting all the signs, the evidence, and it is up to you to decide. As we said, are we in the end times? Various ancient prophecies have depicted the end times. Are these happening? Let's examine the evidence provided by the Dead Sea fish and the greening of Arabia. The white buffalo and Udumbara flowers make an appearance. Oar fish rising in plagues of frogs and locusts. The red dust in lush oceans, snow in summer, and Mississippi bridges at risk. The daily earth wobble and trumpets overhead. Nibiru and its string of pearls in the skies, and the dark twins sighted and fire in the skies. There is a biblical prophecy that has come true. Fish are now appearing in the Dead Sea. The legend that the Dead Sea will host live fish again is apparently related to an aquifer under Iraq that is squeezed as the African rolls to the east. That's the Zeta Talk Africa Roll. Quoting Zechariah 47:8-11. These waters issue forth toward the eastern region and shall go down into the Abaha, and when they shall enter into the sea, the putrid waters, the waters shall be healed. And it shall come to pass that every living creature therein it swarmeth, whithersoever the rivers shall come live, and there shall be a great number of fish, for these waters come hither, that all things be healed and may live whithersoever the river cometh. Fishermen will stand along the shore from En-Gedi to En-Gelam, and there will be places for spreading nets. The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the Mediterranean Sea, but the swamps and marshes will not become fresh. They will be left for salt. Now, they're clearly saying that the Dead Sea is going to no longer be dead but have fresh water, and that happened. That happened. I think it was about a year ago. Quoting Zechariah 14:8, and it shall come to pass in that day that living waters shall go out from Yerushalayim, half of them toward the eastern sea and half of them toward the western sea. In summer and winter shall it be. All pictures of the Dead Sea swimming with fish. and everybody was shocked, but it was prophesied. Arabia, lush. The Hadiths also have a prophecy about the deserts of Arabia becoming lush. Amazingly, this also has just occurred. Quoting the Muslim book number 5, Hadiths 2208, the last hour will not come till the land of Arabia once again becomes meadows and rivers, and there it is, green grass. Yeah, no question. I mean, these are in photographs. You don't hear it on CNN, you don't hear it on the news, but we're in the end times there in the Middle East. White buffalo. The end times Locust legend about the appearance of the white buffalo came true in the late 1990s. Albinism worldwide is appearing and on the increase in many species now, and in the opinion of the Zetas, the cause is the roiling core of the earth. Cave fish do not need coloration to protect from the sun, so this is in our DNA. Quoting Legends of America, the Lakota Sioux Nation has passed down the legend of the white buffalo, a story now approximately 2,000 years old. White buffalo calf woman told the people she would again return for the sacred bundle that she left with them to restore harmony and spirituality as a troubled land. In other words, she's talking about good times coming ahead, and a lot of these prophecies talk about that. Jesus saying, the meek shall inherit the earth. The Zeta saying we're in a transformation period, when the good are allowed to reincarnate back and the evil doers hauled off to prison planets for their reincarnation, where they must live among their own kind. Ooh, how awful. The Udumbara flowers. The end-time Buddhist legend about the Udumbara flowers states they bloom every 3,000 years and return to the human world to herald the return of enlightened being like a Buddha. The Udumbara flowers have returned. Udumbara comes from the ancient Sanskrit language, the oldest language on earth, quoting the Buddhist scripture. Udumbaram is a product of ominous and supernatural phenomenon. It is a celestial flower and does not exist in the mundane world. If a Tathagara or king of the golden wheel appears in the human world, these flowers will manifest due to their great virtue and blessings. I have no idea what a Tathagara is. You have to be a Buddhist, I think, to understand, but they have returned, appearing on bunches on metal or stone, places where no water or soil exists. They are a mystery that has suddenly begun flourishing since 1997 in China and throughout Asia. The flowers are actually husks of the lacewing fly eggs. In the opinion of the Zetas, it is the roiling core emanation that accompanies the 3,600-year return of Nibiru that incites Udumbara, gets those little lace wings all excited, and they lay lots of eggs. The oar fish have risen. Deep water oar fish have been coming to the surface and found on beaches. This is in Japanese lore associated with earthquakes, which have been recently on the increase in Japan. This has been in the news since approximately 2013, and it gets in the news as these deep water fish are huge, up to 20 feet long, and are considered harbingers of earthquakes to come. Quoting CBS in LA, according to traditional Japanese lore, oarfish rise to the water's surface and beach themselves to warn of an impending earthquake, a notion that some scientists have speculated could be supported by the bottom-dwelling fish being more sensitive to seismic shifts. Plagues of frogs. The book of Exodus and the Torah detail the 10 plagues that descend upon Egypt prior to the last passage of Nibiru. We're talking about the Red Sea parting, Moses escaping Egypt, yada yada. Quoting Thought Company, the second plague brought an influx of millions of frogs. The 8th plague would prove to be the most disastrous. Locust insects ate every green plant they could find. We have already experienced locust End of the quote. We have already experienced locust swarms and frantic frogs, making these biblical prophecies valid. Quoting the Observer's site in 2008, in the days prior to the gigantic earthquakes that devastated Sichuan province in China, odd swarms of frogs were seen in the streets of the area and have subsequently been identified in unusual animal behavior of the type that is thought by some geologists to precede earthquakes. Well, it makes sense. Now it has developed that similar frog appearances have been taking place in Bakersfield, California for about 2 weeks, and nobody is sure why. Strange swarms of frogs have also appeared before the 6.9 Loma Prieta earthquake in October of 1989. So that biblical prophecy that it was part of the plagues, the 10 plagues, kind of makes sense. And it's with us today. Locust swarms. That's another biblical prophecy that has been validated. Locusts emerge after plentiful rain encourages their propagation, followed by drought wherein they take wing seeking vegetation to eat. The drought and deluge cycles predicted by the Zetas. They are indeed an end times sign. The Chinese have deployed an army of 100,000 ducks to consume the locust swarms attacking Xinjiang and quoting strange sounds. Potentially threatening situation is developing along both sides of the Red Sea, where ongoing breeding is causing locust numbers to increase on the coasts of Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. In addition, numerous desert locust swarms have been breeding in India, Iran, and Pakistan since June 2019, and some have migrated to southern Iran, where recent heavy rains have nurtured a breeding ground that could generate swarms in the spring. End of the quote. Red dust turning the skies red is featured in many prophecies also. Certainly there are lots of red skies lately and even red dust on the ground. Quoting the book of Exodus, the river was bloody, the earth was filled with redness. It twisted about itself like a coil. It remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. Quoting the Kolbrin, then with the dawning men saw an awesome sight. There, riding on a black roiling cloud came the destroyer, newly released from the confines of the scree vaults, and she raged about the heavens, for it was her day of judgment. The beast with her opened mouth belched fire and hot stones and a vile smoke. It covered the whole sky above, and the meeting place of earth and heaven could no longer be seen. End of the Kolbrin quote. And now we're quoting the Revelations, book of Revelations, things that must shortly come to pass. And behold, when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chieftains, and the mighty men, and every bondsman, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and rocks of the mountains. End of the quote. So there you go. Lots of dark skies and red dust, and some writhing red thing in the sky. Bitter red colored dust was the first plague in the book of Exodus. Certainly we are experiencing a lot of red dust, turning the skies red, but it's not yet making our water blood red and bitter. In the opinion of the Zetas, dust this heavy will not occur until just before the last weeks. The description of debris and hail is found in many prophecies also. Certainly fireballs have been on the increase. Quoting the Vishu Magga, a Buddhist text, when a world cycle is destroyed by wind, first it raises a fine dust, then coarse dust, then fine sand, then coarse sand, then grit, stones, up to boulders the size of large trees. End of the quote. The Sargasum weed is now flourishing. In 1995, the Zetas predicted that as a result of the passage of Nibiru, the oceans will become lush. Has this prophecy come true? Suddenly, in 2015, the Mid-Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean are being choked with Sargasum seaweed. Human scientists were scratching their heads. But the Zetas knew. In the opinion and quoting Zeta Talk, life in the oceans will not die out. The water will have a green tinge. The oceans will appear greenish to many, and for good reason. All the fires have been placed a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide into the air, the stuff of which vegetation growth is made of. With little vegetation on land, the ocean kelp will absorb and utilize this. The oceans will be lush. Well, I thought that was all going to happen after the pole shift, and here we go. And quoting Vogue.com, there's a mass of seaweed in the Atlantic Ocean that last year, at its peak, was so large it stretched all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to West Africa. It's the biggest bloom of seaweed ever recorded. The brown hue of the seaweed on the surface of the water can be seen by satellites. End of the quote. This was one to credit to the Zetas, who predicted 25 years ago at the start of Zeta Talk that the oceans will be lush. Lush, as in green. This is due to the red iron oxide dust in the tail of Nibiru, which is already dusting the earth aplenty. Quoting Green Geek in 2006, experiments in the early 1900s that seeded a region of the Pacific Ocean with iron dust saw a phenomenal 20-fold increase in the local phytoplankton population, with a corresponding decline in atmospheric carbon dioxide by roughly 2,500 tons within a period of 2 weeks. End of the quote. In other words, there you go. A little iron dust in the ocean. Whoop! The plankton grows, the carbon dioxide gets sucked up, and the oceans become lush. The humpback whale. This Sargassum seaweed explosion was noted in 2015, and at the same time, in 2015 we had an explosion in the humpback whale population, as well as the green turtle and sea lions and who knows what else. Massive rebound in ocean life. The humpback eats krill, a tiny shrimp creature which eats the phytoplankton, tiny ocean vegetation, that is on the rebound due to the red dust in Nibiru's tail. Quoting Wikipedia, krill are small crustaceans of the order Euphantsia, I killed it, and are found in all the world's oceans. Krill are considered an important tropic-level connection near the border of the food chain because they feed on phytoplankton and, to a lesser extent, zooplankton, converting these into a form suitable for many larger animals, for which krill makes up the largest part of their diet, and that's those wonderful humpbacks, and they came back from the brink of extinction, and now they're flourishing right along with their Sargassum seaweed. Oh, it's just too wonderful. Okay, bridge over the Mississippi. What could that be? We didn't even have that in ancient prophecies, but we have that in the Zeta Talk prophecy. Zeta Talk has made many end-time predictions, among them that all the bridges on the Mississippi River would rip apart during the pending New Madrid adjustment, where the eastern part of the North America continent moves north and parts west of the Mississippi slide to the southwest. Quoting Zeta Talk in 2010. When the upper Mississippi region finds the land to its west slipping down into the southwest, those parts north which were formerly firmly attached find they can spring northward as the pressure from the bow had been inclining them to do so. This allows the edge of the rip at Duluth, Minnesota to tear further inland, with subsequent rumpling in South Dakota and minor shifting of the ground in all parts in between. End of the quote. The snapping bridge on I-35 at the headwaters of the Mississippi River in 2010 was an example of what could be expected. Per a video cam on the eastern side of the bridge jumped 50 feet to the side as it gave way. It was under a torque, not just pulling apart, not just dropping because something got rusty. It was being torqued. The bridges are not built to withstand torque pressure. Does this comply with the Zeta Talk prediction for bridges on the Mississippi during the New Madrid? I would say yes. Snow in summer. This was not only a Zeta Talk prediction, it actually is of record in China 3,600 years ago during the last passage of Nibiru. On May 29th, we had 6 inches of snow in Idaho, and on July 2nd, we had a blizzard in China. We are having snow in summer around the world now, a verified end times prediction. Written during the reign of Emperor Zi in circa 1600 before Christ. In the 29th year of King Qin, the sun was dimmed. King Qin lacked virtue. The sun was distressed. During the last years of Qin, ice formed in mornings and frosts in the 6th month. Heavy rainfall toppled temples and buildings. Heaven gave severe orders. The sun and moon were untimely. Hot and cold weather arrived in disorder. The 5 cereal crops withered and died. End of the quote. Boy, that somehow sounds like today. Okay, what's going on with the jet stream? What's causing all these weather anomalies is the Earth Wobble, another Zeta Talk end times prediction made in 2004. Slinging the globe back and forth and side to side daily. An example of how this churning translates to weather is the jet stream over the U.S., measuring 231 miles per hour, where it normally rides at 184 miles per hour. Weather records are breaking all over the world. Quoting the Big Wobble, this month Moscow suffered record snowfall. The Atacama Desert, Chile, one of the driest places on Earth, had so much rainfall, a 196-foot waterfall that had run dry for 10 years has been reactivated. Temperatures in Saskatoon dipped as low as minus 44 Fahrenheit, breaking a 112-year record. High temperatures of 80 degrees Fahrenheit broke records in parts of central Alabama as the mercury hit 15 degrees above the February average. 6 feet of snow fell in just 24 hours in parts of California, breaking a 100-year record. Temperatures above 108 Fahrenheit are causing overcrowding on Rio beaches as temps break the 97-year-old record in Brazil. End of the quote. Well, weather anomalies, we don't really hear about that much anymore. They've stopped saying how many records are broken. They're just pretending everything's fine. Go back to shopping. Everything's fine. The moon. In 2004, the Zetas predicted an Earth Wobble, the big magnetic bully Nibiru pushing the Earth back and forth as the North Pole of Earth faced Nibiru daily. This shortly emerged, and per the input from a team of 12 international amateur astronomers, reporting to me, a figure-8 wobble at the North Pole was established on the basis of sunrise and sunset timing and location. Where's the azimuth? What's the altitude? What's the timing? And there it was, the figure-8. And it held for years and years and years. I finally stopped recording all that because it was consistent and stuck with us. All right, this showed up in an extreme twist of the moon's face also. The moon's face is supposed to turn 5 degrees during a day or night, not the 90 degrees currently being seen and recorded. Is this verification of the Zeta Talk prediction on a daily Earth Wobble? Quoting Zeta Talk, the moon has a bead on the edge of the hat rim traveling around the hat as seen in the extreme north during one part of the month and at the extreme south 2 weeks later. Why? Turmoil mostly present on the ecliptic, which the moon normally rides. The easy out for the moon is to avoid the crowded lane, which it does by being too high and then too low for the majority of its orbit. End of the quote. What they're saying here is imagine a hat tilted on a head, and the tilt is now too strong. Instead of being just slightly tilted, like 5 degrees like it's supposed to be, it's way tilted down over one ear and way up over the other ear. It's at least a 90-degree turn of the face, and that ain't ever supposed to happen, by the way. The daily wobble shows up on temperature maps, too, and for those who know how to measure azimuth, where the sun is rising and setting, this also is proof. Let's give credit to a prophecy come true to the book of Enoch, quoting the book of Enoch. And all things on earth shall alter, and shall not appear in their time. And the moon shall alter her order, and not appear at her time. There we go. Biblical. Siberia going dark. The wobble normally is determined by the sun being out of place, too far north or south, odd sunrise or sunset. Lately, the wobble has gotten more pronounced. On July 24th, 2018, it caused 3 hours of darkness in the Yakutia province of Siberia at high noon. 3 hours of darkness. The polar push occurs when the sun is high over the Pacific, just when Yakutia is in the far east of Russia, gets its noon sun. Pushed too far, Yakutia got no sunlight. Briefly. This is yet another example that verifies the Zeta Talk end times prophecy about a wobble. Alberta, too, in Canada. Then this happened on August 17th, 2018, in Alberta, Canada. Here again, when the sun is normally over the Americas, towns in central Alberta registered the early afternoon hours briefly before going pitch dark, so they had to use headlights to drive. In the opinion of the Zetas, this was an overcompensation in the wobble. The bounce back went too far, and the globe wobbled up, then back. In other words, the Earth wobble goes, ooh, sometimes instead of just going, it can get too wobbly. Another end times prediction in both the Kolbrin and the Book of Revelations is trumpeting from the skies during the Nibiru passage and on its approach. Trumpeting actually started happening in various parts around the globe in 2011, but it was the trumpets heard in Jerusalem in 2016 that got heads turning. Quoting the Book of Kolbrin, the days of stillness were followed by a time when the noise of trumpeting and shrilling was heard in the heavens, and the people became as frightened beasts without a headsman. The doom-shape thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightnings. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard. The whole of the land moved and mountains melted. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony. Into the quote from the Kolbrin. And, it's going to get worse, but we are already hearing it. Quoting the Book of Revelations, and the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood. And they were cast upon the earth, and then the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. Into the quote from Revelations. Not just Jerusalem, Kiev and Belarus were trumpeting in 2011. The trumpets take different forms, heard as multitonal trumpets or a horn, or even a howl, as in the Tampa Bay howl. For the Zetas, these early trumpets were due to enclosed water vibrating. Quoting Zeta Talk, Kiev lies south of a dam on the Kiev Reservoir, a damming of the Dnieper River. A vibration of the dam itself, like the strings of a violin, would resonate in the water, thus not only creating a vibration in the ground, but a vibration in the air. There are musical instruments that use a water-filled container to increase the vibration, so the vibration affects the air and sends a tone forth. Glasses of water filled to different heights, when tapped, create a vibrating tone due to the water surface affecting the air. And you can do that. Little children do that. They line up these glasses and go boing, 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 as they tap the glasses of water. Different tones, different depths of the water. From Sichuan province in China, dated to be over 3,000 years old, come bronze masks that show a startling facial appearance. The ears of all these bronze faces are huge, showing that they are hearing loud sounds. The eyes of the famous LongEye masks are bug-eyed in a startled expression. For the Zetas, they are recording what they experienced. Quoting Zeta Talk, the populace was in a state of shock from the pole shift that had just occurred, but wanted to document what they were experiencing in a medium that time would not erase. End of the quote. These are not the musical notes being recorded in Kiev or Tampa Bay. These were ear-splitting blasts. There was a second source of the trumpet sounds for the Zetas caused by lightning. Quoting Zeta Talk again, due to the extreme friction caused by the wafting charged tail of Planet X, or Nibiru, aka Nibiru, lightning discharge is humongous. With massive crackling discharge leaving the Earth's upper atmosphere, this creates voids in the upper atmosphere which clap, causing vibrations in the lower atmosphere, where such vibration is interpreted by mankind as trumpets or horns. End of the quote. Now that is what we have with lightning and thunderbolts. We have a flash of lightning and then kaboom. The kaboom is air masses coming together with a clap because the lightning heated the air masses up and created a void. Alrighty, the biblical reports. Then there are the reports in the Kolbrin and Bible about a moaning earth during the last Nibiru passage, the Jewish Exodus. Quoting the Kolbrin, when it passed, men rose up against those in authority and fled from the cities to dwell in tents on the outlands. Egypt lacked great men to deal with the times. The slaves left. Their multitude moved in the gloom of a half-dawn under a mantle of fine, swirling gray dust. The night was a night of fear and dread, for there was a high moaning above, and fire sprang up from the ground and ran along the ground. Into the quote. Now, what's all that about? The moaning, I know about that. I live in Wisconsin, which is being pulled apart from the Greenland Bay Rip and along the peninsula down into central Wisconsin. We have a hum, Andre, and I sometimes hear it around 3 in the morning. I say, what is that? Is that the water in the pipes coming, down from the hill? But I said, oh, no, we've got a Wisconsin hum. Yeah, which doesn't surprise me because...
But it gets more intense at some times, and it's not due to weather.
That's right.
And for us, too, when we get a good snow, when we get a good blanket of snow, things are really quiet outside. I mean, you can't hear a pin drop because it would drop onto snow, but if like a snowplow goes by, it's like an event because it makes a lot of noise. But there is a distinct hum at different times, and I'm up at like 3:30 in the morning usually because somebody's waking me up at that time.
Yeah.
That's when I hear it.
No question. Me too.
Exactly.
I'm glad to have confirmation.
It's a low hertz, so it'd be like a subwoofer, sonic kind of vibration, like a large vehicle going by and shaking the earth. Something like that, but sustained. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Yeah, so you feel it. Good.
Yep, we agree. I'm glad for the confirmation. For the Zetas, this whole thing about the moaning earth. For the Zetas, this is due to rock being pulled apart and vibrating. Quoting Zeta Talk, the moaning of the earth is akin to material snapping, screeching rock strata pulled across other rock strata, and vibrations of rock strata under tension. This explains the hum recorded in Green Bay, St. Paul, Chicago, Atlanta, San Diego, Mexico City, the UK, and Munich. Quoting SKTP in Minnesota, the howling traveled for miles right through the walls of homes. It was very ghoulish. It sounded like a shrieking wail. It just sounded like a sound I never heard before. This is quoting somebody who's talking about their version of the hum. Quoting DNA info in Chicago, the sound was quite variable, at times somewhat like a locomotive, at times somewhat like a giant fan, at times something like a grinding away. Into the quote. In China, this past June 2020, a roar taken to be a dragon was heard in the mountains of Jingzhou, China. Must be heard to be appreciated, and I have this on my website. Oh man, it sounds exactly like a dragon. About Godzilla has arisen. It certainly sounds like the prediction of a moaning earth made in the Bible, and Kolbrin confirmed as valid. So apparently, the Kolbrin and the Bible have talked about the Moaning Earth, and so have Andre and I. There are prophecies about the sight of Nibiru appearing during a passage as two suns, quoting the book of Revelation. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon its head. Quoting the book of Exodus, the earth was filled with redness. It twisted about itself like a coil and remained close to the sun, whose face it hid. End of the quote. The second sun sightings at dawn and dusk are due to light from Nibiru itself, bending to the curvature of the earth as light, especially red light, bends easily. All these signs are ignored by the establishment or claimed to be sundogs or your imaginations or no comment. But they are seen naked eye, photographed, and even show up on Soho images. A confirmed prophecy thus about Nibiru eventually hiding the face of the sun as it comes from the direction of the sun for its passage. Then there are signs in the sky, bright orbs around the sun, second sun sightings at sunrise or sunset, and on occasion even a string of pearls. A dramatic string of pearls was captured by hunters along the Missouri River, shining down through a break in the clouds. Per the Zetas, these pearls are moons tagging along with Nibiru, unable to leave Nibiru due to its gravity pull. Are these the 7 heads with 10 horns predicted by the book of Revelations? Might be. In Missouri, they saw exactly 12 little orbs beep, 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 along a string. So that's more than 7 heads. But then we have the horns, right? Do we have evidence that the Earth has a dark twin that shared Earth's orbit but rides directly opposite the Earth on the other side of the Sun? Per Zeta talk, the presence of Nibiru in the inner solar system has blocked the Earth orbit, so the dark twin, which normally rides exactly opposite the Earth in their shared orbit, has moved up behind the Earth. It has indeed been seen and photographed. It appears at dusk when one looks out along the orbit path back where the Earth is supposed to come from, and been photographed many times. Now this dark twin, which is a black hunk of rock, no water, no life, it appears in lots of ancient texts, where they talk about this, and even a comic book, so people know about it, but it's not official information out there for the public. If the FAA cam is pointing toward the west at dusk, then the dark twin has been captured on the cam. As the sun goes down, the FAA weather cams are capturing the dark twin, and even features on the dark twin are now visible, including a massive crater. That's a fact. And some of these close-ups like that, because what happens is that there's a phenomenon that Zetas call monster persona, where light reflected on something scatters in all direction. It goes out in all direction, like sunlight does in all directions from the sun. But then when you have a strong gravity pull, those light rays, which are very bendable, come back toward the gravity source. So there's the dark twin, and the light reflected off it goes out. Wait a minute, come back toward Earth. So it looks larger than it really is. But you can determine the features by this when it's kind of like a zoom, you might call it. It's a light ray zoom. Okay. But the dark twin was seen naked eye when the right angle to reflect sunlight. It has a blue or purple color, but also per the Zetas reflects yellow light. That's the light rays that it releases. Otherwise, black objects tend to suck up all light rays. That's why they appear black. Quoting folks in the U.S. who saw it in 2004 when the angle of bound sunlight was optimal in April 2004. Okay, what the heck is that star in the sky? I know that it was at least 3 times bigger than Venus. It is brighter than others, and it's always low on the horizon. I've been seeing it there in Phoenix, Arizona for over a week now. Very obvious, due west in the western sky about 10 p.m. Truly, this is for real. I live in suburban Detroit. I saw it in the sky around 11 p.m. It was huge. I thought it might be an airplane coming in. I believe it was to the southwest sky, low on the horizon, and the fact that it was so huge is what caught my eye. Well, they were seeing a monster, but this has been photographed, and yes, there are features, so it's a real thing. The Hopi Indians also depict Nibiru and the Earth's dark twin as the red Kachina and blue Kachina. These are certainly the colors of these planets when they become visible. For the Zetas, the Earth's dark twin comes up behind the Earth in their shared orbit, pushed close to the Earth, but escapes from the crunch during the last weeks. The approach and drama is described in the Hopi prophecy. Note the parallel to the India mythology where Kali prevails over Shiva and stands over his dead body. Kali is kind of a blue-gray, and Shiva, of course, is flashing red and angry. That's Nibiru, okay? Yet the Hopi and Hindus of India are on the other side of the world from one another geographically, so they didn't adopt each other's prophecies. They are separate prophecies. In as the dark twin has appeared lately, both these prophecies can be considered fulfilled and legit. Quoting the Hopi prophecy, when the blue star Katrina makes its appearance in the heavens, the fifth world will emerge. This will be the day of purification. It will come when the blue Kachina dances in the plaza and takes off his mask. In the final days we will look up in the heavens and we will witness the return of the two brothers who helped create this world in the birthing time. The twins will be seen in our northwestern skies. So we have Venus is also squeezed toward the Earth during this time per the Zetas. And I think that's one of the Katrinas. The return of the blue Katrina, who is also known as Nangahohu, will be forewarned that tells us there will be soon a new day, a new way of life, and a new world coming. When the purifier comes, we will see him first as a small red star, which will come very close and sit in our heavens watching us. This purification will show up in many miraculous signs in our heavens. Then one morning we will awaken to a red dawn, and the sky will be the color of blood. End of the quote. In other words, the hour of the pole shift, yes, which we can't escape. But the Zeta Talk site has lots of advice on what to do to survive and live afterwards. It's going to be a wonderful time. Another end-time prediction is fire dropping from the sky. Per the Zetas, this is petrol in the tail of Nibiru, and without oxygen to burn up, it drops to the ground as a fine oil. This has arrived, certainly proving this end-time prophecy to be valid. This was recently recorded on October 1st, 2019, off the coast of Chile and was deemed not a meteor. Quoting RT, the scientists concluded they found no remains, vestiges, or evidence of a meteor left behind by the luminous and incandescent objects. Whatever the mystery entities were, they did leave some trace behind, however, burning foliage at a number of sites. End of the quote from RT. This was predicted by a Puer written by the ancient Egyptians and closely matches the book of Exodus in the Bible. Quoting the Egyptian Ipuwer papyrus, gates, columns, and walls are consumed by fire. The fire is the sky is in confusion. End of the quote. The Kolbrin, based on Egyptian records, also records a strange flowing fire, and I quote, in the glow of the destroyer, the earth was filled with redness. The face of the land was battered and devastated by a hail of stones, which smashed down all that stood in the path. They swept down in hot showers, and strange, flowing fire ran along the ground in their wake. End of the quote from the Kolbrin. Volcanoes run down along the west coast of the Americas. In Central America is rift with them. Thus, these stories of a blanket of fire dropping from the sky were recorded there also. Popol-Vul, the sacred book of the Mayans, states, people were drowned in a sticky substance raining from the sky, and then there was a great din of fire above their heads. End of the quote. Why would such a blanket of fire form during a pole shift hour when this does not happen today. Per the Zetas, two factors are involved. The greasy tail of Nibiru is thick at that time, wafting over the earth. And second, the hurricane-force winds have stripped away some of the atmosphere. Thus, oxygen at the higher altitudes is missing. Thus, the fire occurs close to the ground when it gets oxygen. Quoting Velikovsky in his book Worlds in Collision, the tails of comets are composed mainly of carbon and hydrogen gases. Lacking oxygen, they do not burn in flight, but the inflammable gases passing through an atmosphere contain oxygen, will be set on fire. Binding all the oxygen available at the moment, the descent of a sticky fluid which comes earthward and blazed with heavy smoke is recalled in the oral and written traditions of the inhabitants of both hemispheres. End of the quote. So, where does that come from? The petrels? According to the Zetas, the asteroid belt was no accident. There were many life-bearing planets in that position, and they were mostly water planets, but they were life-bearing, and therefore there are organic compounds. So here comes Nibiru, which with its trash, coming through that area and slinging and bumping into everything, breaking all these little planets up, and the magma inside, becomes the asteroids when it cools. All the water becomes what are long-period comets slinging through, a lot of water planets. They're dirty snowballs, okay? And what about the organic compounds? Well, if there's no oxygen out in space to cause burn it up, or make a petrol and burn it up, it comes around and gets into our oxygen, and all this organic compounds form a petrol, and it either burns up in the sky or burns up as it's falling. Or if it can't burn up because all the oxygen has been used up, it drains through the ground and becomes, guess what? Our raw oil reserves. It's not moldering dinosaurs or whatever you're told. Man cannot recreate the process of creating oil that they claim went on. Well, millions and millions of years and all these dinosaurs, and they got squeezed, and finally they became oil. Nope. They can't recreate it, and they should be able to. It's really from the asteroid belt, and it drops to Earth during a passage. In March 2019, the Russian Lomonosov satellites captured explosions on the outer edge of the atmosphere. For the Zetas, this was due to the petrol bubbles in the tail of Nibiru exploding when they had access to oxygen, which they did when they hit our atmosphere. Now in 2020, they are dropping lower in the atmosphere while they burn. In February 2020, this fire in the sky was recorded on a garage video. There was no sound associated with the brief light in the sky, no lightning or bolide passing, no explosion nearby. Then in May 2020, there was a sound like a banshee screaming in the Texas sky. You got to hear this stuff to believe it. And I've got that on my website. You have to do a search. The Texas native recording this screech knew it was not a pressure valve release nor a loud party, as it was bloody murder in the skies. For the Zetas, it's related to the Lomonosov petrol bubbles burning a path through the atmosphere, creating vibrating air masses. Where does this petrol in the tail of Nibiru come from? As I said, passing through the asteroid belt, etc. Here again, the Zeta's warning to be 100 miles from any volcano likely to emerge is key, because the petrol will form in abundance when this wafting petrol stuff goes over a volcano. It's like reverse cracking. It's like heat applied to this raw petrol stuff, and now you've got gasoline or petroleum, and then boom. All these tales of firestorms during past pole shifts took place in volcanic territory. Quoting the Egyptian Kolbrin, a strange flowing fire ran along the ground. Quoting Velikovsky, Popol-Vul, the sacred book of the Mayans, narrates people were drowned in a sticky substance coming from the sky. A similar account is preserved in the annals of, I can't pronounce this, Kochutelitan. The age which ended in the rain of fire was called the Son of Fire Rain. In Siberia, the Volgals carried down through the centuries and millennia this memory. God sent a sea of fire upon the earth. In the far East Indies, the Aboriginal tribes relate that in the remote past, water of fire rained from the sky. And this is the end of what I've prepared, Andre, as saying we are in the end times already. We're not getting it full bore, which we will as Nibiru approaches and we have the pole shift. But there it is. Prophecies come true. Many
Right.
of them. The Buddhists. Not just, the Middle East during the last passage, but the Buddhists in Japan and the Hopi Indians and, leaving nobody out. They're all made these prophecies, and they're happening. And there we are.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week, Nancy, but thank you for that.
I just
and
noticed that.
If you want to,
yeah.
Yep. If you want to check out more, you can go to zetatalk.com or poleshift.ning.com for more current earth changes, reports, earthquakes, and that sort of thing. Always check out usaebn.org for your preparedness information. Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, talk to you next month. Bye-bye, Andre.